Hello, my name is David Strain. I'm a senior clinical lecturer at the University of Exeter Medical School, and I co-chair the Medical Academic Staff Committee with my friend and mentor from my medical school days, Professor Peter Dangerfield. Peter.
And I'm Professor Peter Dangerfield, formerly head of Year 1 at Liverpool, and continuing my own researches into scoliosis and gait problems at Staffordshire University. I co-chair with David the MASC for 2019-20. MASC is one of the BMA committees that represents academic doctors and advocates for the academic activities of all doctors. We are elected annually by our annual conference and by academics in Wales, and of course, subject to approval at this ARM, by academics in Scotland. In addition to our executive, we have two key subcommittees to take forward our priorities. One of these is the Joint Academic Trainees Subcommittee, JATS, which is a joint committee with the Junior Doctors Committee, hence its name, and with representatives from both committees and beyond. It is chaired by Yanushi. Second is the Women in Academic Medal Group, also known as WAM for short, set up to take forward Women in Academic project and made up of interested members from MASC, other BMA committees and the Medical Women's Federation. It is chaired by Carmen. Our office team also includes David Katz and Mary Ann, who are both deputy chairs of the MASC.
So, in July 2019, my first meeting as chair, and it feels like a lifetime ago now, we had our MASC away day where we established what were going to be our key priorities. We agreed that we wanted to ensure a minimum standard for honorary NHS contracts for clinical academic trainees employed within the university sector. We recognised that many academic trainees do not have an honorary contract that was fit for purpose. They don't have many of the protections that NHS clinicians take for granted. We wanted to protect and enhance the local Clinical Excellence Award scheme for both academic consultants and senior academic GPs. The contractual right of consultants for local CEA needs to be extended to all clinical academics. When it comes to the senior academic GPs, because there would be a loss of an honorary NHS contract for university employed GPs, there seems to be no route for senior academic GPs to get their local clinical excellence awards at all. And therefore, we're working with the SAPC to resolve this with NHS England. We've also been implementing work towards a revised junior doctor contract, which was all about getting that implemented within the academic sector. I'm sure you're aware the revised contract involves a shift of salary for the out-of-hours work into the basic salary. However, this brought increased stress to universities hosting academic trainees because they now had to pay the increased basic salary, while the NHS contributed less for the out-of-hours component. It's also had a major impact on funders such as research charities. We had a major push on research governance and integrity and transparency across the board. We wanted assurances that universities were reporting on lapses in governance and intended to extend our request to the pharmaceutical sector. Finally, during our away day, we received a presentation from the Royal College of Physicians about their document, Delivering Research for All. This follows on from a paper that MASC wrote several years ago called Every Doctor, a Scholar and a Scientist. Both documents want to give every single clinician working within the NHS the skills and opportunity to do research as part of their job plan if they so wish. We just started making progress when, well, basically, the world changed. The virus, known now as the SARS-CoV-2, basically changed the way that we work. Not just when it came to physical meetings versus virtual meetings, but actually what our key roles were. And during this time, clinical academics were perfectly placed to take on the tremendous amount of new information, indeed be involved in the generation of this new information. Most of us have global contacts that allowed us to be in touch with people. Myself, I'd been to Wuhan province only 4 months before this outbreak, so we could reach out to some of these people that were involved in these research. And as clinical academic community and as BMA officers, we were able to respond incredibly rapidly to the developments within the pandemic. We quickly identified the impact of COVID-19 on people from Black, African, Asian and minority ethnic groups of their heritage. This led to a project that looked at the risk of an individual from a multitude of different perspectives, not just from this BAME heritage, but also including the multiple different comorbidities that had not previously been identified with other viral infections. That led us to a paper talking about risk mitigation and adaptation for the NHS. This paper is now being used in many other institutions between an individual risk assessment and an institutional risk assessment.
We have discussed the importance of getting our students back to their placements in an appropriate way and worked with the Medical Students Committee on a joint statement and guidance on the subject. We know that many students lost clinical placements and educational opportunities because of the pandemic, and we have written to the GMC and the Medical Schools Council to suggest joint efforts to respond to these problems.
We also joined a group of research funders, including the Association of Medical Research Charities, the Royal College of Physicians, NIHR, HGE, and many others to issue a joint statement out assuring clinical academics would not be disadvantaged by pausing their clinical academic work to come back to the clinical domain and help out the COVID-19. Now our principal aim is to try and hold them to this. We issued guidance to many academics who, like myself, volunteered to work in the clinical arena on a full-time basis on how best to protect their pay and conditions if they needed to move employers. Coming up, we've been assessing the BMA's response to the long COVID syndrome. This is affecting up to 20% of doctors who've been exposed to COVID-19, and many groups, including myself, has worked up research in order to identify the risk factors for this, identify what's causing it, and hopefully work towards a treatment for it.
We have also made strenuous efforts to keep our non-COVID activities going. Women in Academic Medicine Group has undertaken a major career progression survey to try and work out what the barriers are to women progressing in the academic medical field. A huge amount of data has been collected which is still being analysed, and we also hope that there will be sufficient responses from BME negative academics to analyse the shape of their careers and identify any barriers to their progression. A draft report has also been created about role models for women in academic medicine. We had hoped to have this ready to be published earlier this year, but the pandemic has clearly delayed us. We're now hoping that it will be published in the autumn. It'll make interesting reading for anybody interested in a medical academic career, and I would strongly recommend you reading it. We have also sought to influence the report on the gender pay gap review as it affects academic medicine. And finally, the group has also been working with academics in Hull York Medical School on career progressions and on the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on the careers of women doctors. Initial papers from this work are at the pre-print stage as I speak.
Of course, the other group that we are hugely interested in are the academic trainees, and the COVID has had a major impact on the way clinical academic trainees work. As we mentioned earlier, the increase in basic pay under the new junior contract has put pressure on research funders, especially charities. This risks the reduction of the number of academic appointments, and we've been working with the NIHR and HEE in order to ensure academic training opportunities remain. These problems are likely to worsen with the financial impact of the pandemic on both universities and charities. Despite the likely greater demand for clinical academics in a post-COVID world, we are seeing a reduction in the number of positions available. So the second challenge that we're facing is to get academics trying to get promoted to a university position, such as doing a PhD or a clinical lecturer. This is very often they don't get an appropriate honorary NHS contract. According to our survey of academic trainees, few, if any, honorary contracts provided the full protection of a new junior doctor contract. work scheduling, exception reporting, access to guardian of safe working practice, amongst others, were just not available. Now, our preferred solution would to be an agreed honorary contract based on the junior doc contract. However, NHS employers say that they do not have a mandate nor time to negotiate it. So, as a second best, we have agreed and jointly published a statement that has a checklist of the minimum standards. Our next duty is to go to all of our clinical academic trainees, encouraging them to get their honorary contract training. We've been doing this through the social media platform, through many other ways of getting hold of them, and they just need to try and get that contract checked. We visited the first point of contact in Glasgow in order to update them to the potential problems for clinical academics and make sure that they are fully conversant with the solutions. The last issue, again, which has been highlighted by COVID-19, is that many clinical academics have sacrificed their research time in order to contribute to the COVID-19 service. Now, we did agree that statement with the NHSC, with NIHR and HEE on the appropriateness that no academic should be adversely affected. However, we are now focusing on how we're going to take this forward. We've written to HEE asking for what compensatory measures are going to be introduced. And we are starting our planning phase for what happens when, or if, hopefully, wave 2 happens. So what are priorities going forward? Peter?
The pandemic is likely to cost the academic section billions of pounds. With the risk of research and academic employment being under threat, which of course is not helped by the present problems of the A-level results, of course, we must lobby for existing, if not increased funding for the universities and research charities to compensate them for the pandemic losses. The research charities, particularly the smaller ones, are vital to the small projects that a lot of us undertake in academia, and of course to the research projects of many NHS doctors as well. We must also campaign to protect clinical academic jobs, pay and conditions. We've already been told there are offers of early retirement and voluntary redundancy and requests for pay cuts. All the time, there is a significant increase in work arising from the A-level fiasco, as we all know.
Of course, with all this focus on the pandemic, many of us have put Brexit to the back of the mind, but that is still looming large. In 4 months' time, our current arrangements with the European Union will no longer apply, and this could have a huge impact for the academic sector. Much of the academic workforce is currently able to move between the UK and the rest of Europe. The EU is a significant source of funding. It provides the opportunity for exchange of ideas and to build collaborations. And if we don't maintain our ability to do these things, global clinical academic talent will just pass us by. With what that will then to cease to get the global funding. The charitable organisations will no longer come here. The pharmaceutical sector, which currently puts in the region of £24 billion per annum into the UK, including into the NHS, will just not come here. If the MHRA starts to diverge from the EMA, the European Medicines Agency, the pharmaceutical sector may just abandon the UK as a whole. This will mean our patients won't be able to participate in clinical trial and benefit from the latest research drugs. It will mean a loss to the UK economy and the loss of academic and pharmaceutical physicians' job.
Another significant event for the BMA in the last year was the publication of the Romney Report, which obviously highlighted a number of issues BMA-wide. From our committee's point of view, we recognise the need to ensure we follow the report's advice and recommendations, to ensure we remain representative of our constituencies, and to ensure an open, welcoming and respectful culture on the committee. I personally recognise the need to model the behaviour we expect from our committee members.
And of course, one of the most important things that that's been highlighted is the need to engage with our member. Remember, because we genuinely believe that every clinician should have the opportunity to do some research if they desire, this means more than just the mainstream medical academic. Our work on the COVID-19 outbreak has highlighted how important this is, because without every clinician contributing to studies and report the effects of COVID on its treatment, we wouldn't have been the country with the world's first proven treatment for the management of COVID. We plan on ensuring this engagement with members through a series of virtual conferences. We were the first to hold the virtual branch of practice conference with COMAR 2020, and we've got plans for future, less formal fireside chats in the very near future with the medical students to reflect the legacy of our late friend and colleagues of Frank Wells in the fields of research ethics and integrity. So, in conclusion, our committee continues to work hard to put the rights of all physicians to have academic activity. The COVID-19 has highlighted the strength of the UK academic community, working within and alongside the NHS, and also what we can contribute to the BMA. We have a looming financial crisis for the university sector, and without your help and support, we risk seeing a drop in number of clinical academics and a shift in the responsibilities to the NHS. I hope we can count on your support, and we thank you very much for listening to our video on the work of the Medical Academic Staff Committee. Thank you very much.